The Conservatives finally released their plan as their opponents sharpen their attacks. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
And for the second day in a row, and with less than a week to go in the federal election campaign, the talk on the hustings is about party platforms. And today it's the Conservatives' platform in the spotlight. The Conservatives are the last of the major parties to release a detailed platform. The New Democrats and the Liberal Party released their platforms over the Easter long weekend. Today, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, surrounded by dozens of his candidates, unveiled the party's platform at an event in Woodbridge, Ontario, calling it a blueprint for change.
Change so that you can afford food and housing. Change so that you can live on a safe street. Change to put Canada first. Change is what we need now more than ever. Change offers the prospect of restoring the Canadian promise, the promise that hard work gives you a great life in a beautiful, affordable house on a safe street, protected by our brave troops under our proud flag. That is the Canadian promise. That is the promise the country made to me and to my wife, Anna. It's the promise that it made to countless generations who came before us.
Before getting into some of the details of his party's platform, Poilievre tried to contrast how he thinks his party's approach differs from that of the Liberal Party.
Just Saturday, Mark Carney announced that not only will he keep all of Justin Trudeau's reckless spending, he will add $130 billion more. Spending that will drive costs higher for food, housing, and everything else. Spending that will risk our economy and threaten our future. It's not that Mark Carney is as bad as Justin Trudeau. He's far more costly.
In the lead up to this big reveal by Poilievre, the Liberals have been warning Canadians to brace for cuts. Mark Carney has said Poilievre would cancel programs like child care, dental care, and pharmacare, cuts that could top $140 billion. The Conservative platform released today forecasts what the party calls program spending changes. $3 billion in year one, $4.5 billion in the second year, almost $6 billion in year three, and more than $9 billion in year four. Poilievre described where he sees the government achieving savings.
We will cut the Liberal deficit by 70% by cutting back on bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies, slashing money for special interests, and unleashing $500 billion of extra economic growth by unlocking the power of our resources and home building. We will, thank you. Now, in the past, I've told you that there would be a dollar for dollar law. Every dollar of new spending would need to be matched with a dollar of savings. We've gone even further. Every dollar of new spending in our platform, especially for things like defense, will be met with $1.50 in savings in other areas.
All told, the Conservative platform pledges $34 billion in new spending and $75 billion in tax cuts over the next 4 years. At a campaign event in Fredericton, New Brunswick last night, Mark Carney didn't hold back on what he thinks about Pierre Poilievre's approach.
No, Pierre Poilievre seems to believe that the only way to defend ourselves is to leave every Canadian to fend for themselves. He seems to believe that we should just go along to get along, that the way to get through this crisis is to keep our heads down, to give the Americans what they want and hope for the best. That is not what makes Canada strong. So the choice in this election could not be clearer. In this crisis, do we meekly accept what the Americans want? Or do we stand up for ourselves and for each other?
Mark Carney is on an all-day tour of Quebec today. He is in Trois-Rivières right now. He'll also hit up Laval, some stops in between. The leader of the New Democrats, Jagmeet Singh, is campaigning in British Columbia. He is in Vancouver right now. He'll be making remarks shortly. Jagmeet Singh was in Port Moody, BC last night and accused Poilievre of importing Trump's chaos into Canada.
And Pierre Poilievre, he's not serious. He wants to import Trump-style chaos into Canada while pretending he's got the answers. He'd hand our housing crisis to the same corporate landlords who caused it. He'd cut and gut public services, cut the help that people count on, and leave working people and working families to fend for themselves. He attacks trans kids just to score points. He spreads fear to hide the fact that he has no plan. He doesn't believe in the things that hold this country together, and he will never fight for the people who make it work.
Later tonight, the NDP campaign will move on to Edmonton and hold a rally. Jagmeet Singh will be joined by the former Alberta NDP Premier, Rachel Notley. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Well, let's dig a little bit more into the release of the election platforms from the political parties in the federal election campaign. Professor Ian Lee is back with us from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Hello, Professor.
Good afternoon, Rob.
Yeah, good to hear from you. Well, let's start with the Liberal platform, and then we'll talk about the Conservative platform, which is like hot off the presses. But
yes,
the Liberal Party platform, $130 billion in new spending, large deficits for the foreseeable future. Mr. Carney says it's all necessary. He doesn't even call it spending. He calls it investments. What do you think about it?
Let me just go big picture just for one moment, Rob. I think I have enormous respect for John Ibbitson. He published an article, an op-ed yesterday saying it's, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, there's almost no differences. I just fundamentally disagree with the greatest respect because I think there are profound, measurable, observable, philosophical differences between the Liberal platform and the Conservative. Clearly, I have a point of view, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I just want to talk about what is it. The Liberal platform, which I've read, it is much more, I'll call it macro. It sees government as the principal or most important agent of economic change. Poilievre says this election's about change, and Carney's been agreeing. And I don't think he's being disingenuous, but his vision and the Liberal Party's vision of change is that it will be driven principally by government. I'm not trying to call them socialists or anything like that they're going to get rid of the private sector. Of course not. But they see in that huge increase in spending and, by the way, significant increases in deficits and their promises. I mean, Carney said in his own words, I want to get the government of Canada into the building houses to solve the housing crisis. That one sentence, and that's a quote in the Globe and Mail yesterday, that's just a wonderful line because it captures the fundamental philosophical difference. They do see government as the agent of change. I don't think this is a repudiation of Trudeau. He says, I'm different from Trudeau. Well, yes and no. What he has done, I believe, in this platform is he has doubled and tripled down on Trudeau. What I mean by that is that the Trudeau government for 9 years were much more interventionist than any past Liberal government. That's everyone understands that and agrees. There's a consensus on that statement. And, they ran up spending very dramatically. Okay, yes, there was COVID. I don't dispute that. They also ran up the deficits. And so what Carney is doing is he's going beyond that. He's spending even more than happened under Trudeau. He's becoming more interventionist than the Trudeau years. So, yes, he is different, but not in the sense that he's going in a different direction. He's going in the same direction, but doing it even more so, doubling down, spending even more money, running up even larger deficits. And then you compare and contrast that, and we can get there in a second. But the Conservative platform is going in the exact opposite direction. That's the key point.
I think what may be surprising some people like you, and you've spoken highly in the past about the job that Paul Martin, Jean Chrétien did in the mid 90s, restoring fiscal discipline, is I think some people expected that from Mark Carney, given his background. That they expected a centrist with a business background, that people would see this as the Liberal Party returning back to the political center. Yes. You've called them in the past blue liberals or business liberals, liberals who take the financial situation of the government quite seriously, keep government spending in check, bring down the deficit. And yet this would seem to be a marked departure from that. And that's maybe disappointing to some. Are you one of them?
Well, I am, of course. But what I think happened, and this is not a conspiracy theory, because I want to keep, people throw that around whenever they want to disagree with you when you say something. What I'm about to say is based on the principle of self-interest. I think that a deal was struck, a broad understanding, if people don't like the word deal because it sounds conspiratorial. An understanding evolved before Carney ran for the leadership recently, very recently, with the panjandrums that are the elder statesmen and the leaders of the Liberal Party behind the scenes, the so-called Laurentian elites. Okay, these are the decision makers in Ottawa. They're not all card-carrying members. There's lots of people in downtown Ottawa, retired public servants. I know some of them, highly educated, and I'm not calling them partisans. I don't mean that they're, envelope-licking people that go out and knock on doors. Not at all. They have a worldview that is progressive, liberal progressive. It's not blue liberal. It's not the engine. The private sector is the engine of growth. I've actually talked to retired public servants who say, we've got the big picture here in Ottawa. We understand where the economy should be going, and it's our job to articulate battery plants because you people in the private sector won't do it. You're just too concerned about making money. I've heard this over the last 40 years so many times it's unbelievable. I think that the Laurentian elites said, look, Carney, you're our guy, but let's be clear, you're going to continue with our philosophical view, which and I'm talking Ian now, characterized before the House of Commons Finance Committee and in multiple interviews. I've characterized it as protect, subsidize, and regulate. If you look at the broad picture of the last 40, 50, 60, since the 70s, liberal, and I'm not saying every last bill and every last policy, but the broad thrust of the government of Canada under Liberal governments was to protect the industry. That's why we had lots of protectionism over the years. Supply management was only one. The Fraser Institute estimates 1/3 of the economy is protected against outside competition.
Right,
That's
right.
amazing.
We only have a minute left. So
and then I don't think the Liberals have ever found a tax that they disagree with. Has anybody ever heard the Liberals say, we don't believe in taxation and higher taxes? They have been very, very big on, every imaginable tax going. And they believe in regulation big time. That's what we see with the No Pipeline Bill and the Tanker Ban Bill and so forth. So I think that Carney, I think Carney is a blue liberal. There was a quote yesterday, by the way. I can't pronounce his last name. He's the CEO of Shopify, Lutke or something.
Oh, Toby Lutke, yeah, Lutke, yeah,
that guy. Really interesting character. He said in a long tweet, he said, "I think Carney is a very good person, a very smart person, very informed person." And he said they should be happy, the Liberals, that they got him. But he said, it looks like, he was talking like me and what I've been saying, he says, it looks like the Liberal Party has said to him, you are going to go down the road that we've been going down for many, many years. And he said, this is not what is needed at this time. So he was complimenting Carney while categorically rejecting.
While saying it's time for a change. Okay, so the Conservative Party wants to be the agents of change. Its platform is about 2 hours old now. I sent it to you. I know you've had a chance to look through it. It's only 30 pages long, which is not that long for a party platform. Even a Conservative Party platform used to be in the hundreds of pages. This is 30 pages. I'll ask you for your breakdown, what you think of that, when we come back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, here on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. So as I said, Conservative platform, hot off the presses. Your initial reaction?
It is the most pro-growth, private sector pro-growth platform I can remember seeing in many years in Canada, because the Conservative Party was often red Tory. I mean, Mulroney was a red Tory party, and even Harper, because he was such an incrementalist, and yes, he was conservative, but he was in a minority at some point, so he did a lot of nipping and tucking and compromising. This is the most unabashedly pro-economic growth party. Platform, excuse me. I mean, I would urge everyone just to download it, and just, if you don't have time to read the whole 30 pages, and it's fascinating reading it. I mean,
Right.
it's just incredible. I'm just going right here very quickly. Create a national energy corridor, repeal Bill C-69, repeal the West Coast tanker ban, scrap the liberal fuel regulations, scrap the liberal electricity tax. It just goes on and on. It's just stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Double oil production in Newfoundland and Labrador. Kill the emissions cap on oil and gas. I mean, build the road to the ring of fire. If for anybody who believes that it's the role of the private sector and companies to develop grow the economy, this is your platform. Now, for those of anyone listening who believes in it's the role of government to determine where battery plants are made and financed and who will make them, etc., then you won't like this at all. So, if those who want the private sector to lead the way and the government act as the referee of the hockey game, this is your platform. That's in great summary is what he's doing.
All right, I want to ask you one quick question. I do find this interesting, and you're a university professor, big believer in education. You and I have talked in the past how especially the upper ranks of the public service in Ottawa, very smart people with graduate degrees, lots of letters after their names. They're saying I assume this is for entry-level jobs into the government, that a lot of these jobs would not require university degrees anymore. College diplomas, for example, would be good enough. Some people will say, well, that's kind of a dumbing down of the civil service or a deprofessionalization of the civil service. I'd be curious to know what you think in a minute or less, please.
Yeah, I will. I'm an unusual academic. I came from the private sector. I was 9 years in the private sector, and I don't have this generalized hostility, which many professors do. And I've been there for 38 years. For anybody who just says I don't know what I'm talking about, I've been in the university for 38 years, and I've taught overseas for American and Canadian universities, probably 15 or 20. And I have a very good idea about the corporate culture. And there's a generalized suspicion, hostility, some outright hatred, some just suspicion of the private sector. And I don't think it's warranted. And the idea that only the best and brightest can be people with PhDs, I mean, Neil Halberstam showed it in his book, The Best and Brightest of the Vietnam War, that they were the ones who screwed up the Vietnam War worse than anybody. We're the best and brightest who went to the best universities. I'm not anti-education. I believe strongly in universities, but I don't believe that everybody has to have a university degree. The colleges do a fabulous job. I'm not supposed to say that, but they do. And there's lots of jobs in the government that do not require higher education. I can understand DMs and ADMs and the finance and accounting obviously need accounting degrees and designations and so forth.
Yeah,
but,
you need lawyers in the Justice Department.
And you need lawyers in the Justice Department. But there's lots of jobs where I think private sector experience in the Department of Industry would be far better than just being a pure land person who never worked in the private sector.
Okay, we have to go. Quick prediction: liberal minority, liberal majority. What is it? What's it going to be on Monday? What's your prediction?
I'll try and keep it really quick, but I think the zeitgeist is changing under our feet. For the first 2 weeks of the campaign,
liberal minority,
a liberal minority at the best, or possibly a conservative minority.
Okay, we'll talk to you next week when it's all over. Thank you. Bye-bye.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Let's jump into it. A lot of ground to cover today with our Newsday panelists, including Chris Sims, Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, former journalist and staffer on Parliament Hill. How are you?
Wonderful, Snowman. I'm reporting from North Battleford, Saskatchewan.
What are you doing there?
We're selling Franco's carbon tax book.
Oh, you're selling carbon tax books. Okay. All right. Jordan Paquette is with us, Vice President, Blue Sky Strategy Group. He knows his way around Parliament Hill as well. Hello. How are you?
Hello, Rob. Great. I'm great. Thanks. Great to be here.
So then there were six days to go. Jagmeet Singh, right now the NDP leader, is campaigning in British Columbia, and then he is moving on to Edmonton, where the NDP have a few seats they want to hang on to in the Edmonton area. Pierre Poilievre has been spending time in the GTA 905 communities. Carney, it's all day in Quebec today. So, Jordan, what do you take away from this? Where the leaders are at this point of the campaign? What does this say about the state of the race?
Sure. So, I mean, right now we're in the final sprint to the finish line. I think you're going to see a lot of crisscrossing the country, except perhaps in the NDP, where I would expect them to stay more focused in BC and I think in Edmonton, trying to kind of hang on to some of the furniture. I know Jagmeet's been in his own riding sort of a couple of times. In Poilievre's case, I think you'll see them in and around the GTA area. I would expect another trip out west as well, as they're quite competitive in BC, before doing a cross-country swing just to rev up the troops. And then for the Liberals, I think they're heading to areas where they're hoping to pick up. I think in Quebec, seeing Trois-Rivières area today, Conservatives do have a strong candidate there as well. So they'll probably head to some of these areas, either where they think there's a close three-party race or they think they can pull seats away from somebody else. So yeah, we're in the final finish right now. Basically, the big goal is not to screw up for anybody else, and just everybody keeps rushing towards the finish line.
But does there not also, Jordan, come a point in time where these campaigns have to say, we're not going to win this riding, but we could win this one. So we're pulling resources from, and sorry to the local Canada, we're pulling resources out of here and we're putting it over there. Is that happening now, do you think?
Absolutely. And I think it was something that was probably happening even last week as well. I mean, parties obviously have their own internal polling that are looking much more directly at some micro targets in certain ridings and what could actually flip a riding, say if they bust out a certain vote percentage. So it becomes a bit of a math in that sense. But yeah, I would expect to see some people reassign different areas. I think the war rooms will start to clear out a little bit more now that all the policy platforms are announced. There's not as many as important jobs there. So I think people will be sent out to doors to really drum up every last vote that they possibly can in some of these close battleground ridings.
Again, Chris Sims is with us, Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, originally from British Columbia, spent a lot of time in Ottawa. I would like to ask you what your sense of someone who's from British Columbia of just how desperate things are for the NDP there, Chris.
Oh, they're very desperate. As you pointed out, Jagmeet Singh is back in his home riding. I've been hearing from people who are on the doors, both from the Conservatives and actually from some folks with the NDP, that he might lose his seat. So for a party leader to be at risk of losing his seat, that is why I'm not surprised that the NDP leader is hanging around there. Also, BC has a funny sort of hot and cold split. So generally speaking, especially where I was growing up in kind of a resource town, a mill town up in northern Vancouver Island, they either go NDP or Conservative. So it's either the kind of union orange card NDP folks, the loggers, or the Conservatives, who are also still loggers. So that is why the NDP is really trying to wedge their vote there and save the furniture, as Jordan was saying.
And what do you think about heading to Edmonton? I mean, the NDP's they're hoping to hang on to what they have in Edmonton. Notley is going to be introducing Singh tonight in Edmonton. Chris, what's your sense there?
Yeah, Edmonton is kind of a funny town because it's a government town. Of course, it's the capital of Alberta. And so when you get right into the heart of it, you do see a lot of orange signs. And Rachel Notley, despite bringing in a surprise carbon tax and things like that, she's got a long history of politics here in Alberta, including her late father, Grant Notley. So she has a lot of original NDP Western weight here in Alberta. So for her to be doing the intros kind of adds a bit of heft, I would say, to Jagmeet.
Okay. Any other thoughts to add there, Jordan, just on kind of where everybody is right now and maybe how people are feeling at this stage of the game?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a mix of motivation and angst, I think, in all campaigns. The people are very motivated to get out the door, people I talk to in any campaign, especially more so on the Conservative side. They feel that the debates went well. They feel that they have a bit of bounce in their step heading into some of these close areas.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think everyone's just sort of waiting until Monday, but making sure that nothing's left on the table because, I mean, as we've seen in previous races, it could come down to a few key seats or a few key regions. And you don't want to be the party that left 100 votes on the table and lost it by that much if you could have just hit another couple neighborhoods.
Okay. So when we come back, we'll talk about the platforms with the Conservative platform out today, the Liberal and New Democrat platforms out over the weekend, and some thoughts on what you think about some of the measures that are in there. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's News Radio.
You have questions
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel with Chris Sims, Alberta Director from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Jordan Paquette, Vice President, Blue Sky Strategy Group. Okay, let's start with the Conservatives since that's the newest platform out about 2.5 hours ago now. And Chris, you're with the Taxpayers Federation. So what's here for tax policy that would get the approval of the Taxpayers Federation, do you think, from the Conservatives?
Well, this big headline that just was posted by Steve Chase in the Globe and Mail kind of says it. Conservative election platform pledges $75 billion in tax cuts and referendums before any future tax hikes. So that's sounding pretty darn good. The $75 billion, of course, was inclusive of the income tax reduction that Pierre Poilievre is promising. So on average, up to $1,800 per year with that income tax cut. He's also promising to actually get rid of all carbon taxes, including the industrial carbon tax. The folks are going to save money on homes. So those are some pretty hefty tax cuts we're pretty happy to see. We're happy also to see a big spending reduction in compared to Mr. Carney's crazy platform with really high spending. He was going to outspend or add more debt than Justin Trudeau was. So that was kind of surprising seeing that from Carney. But as far as the Conservatives go, we're pretty happy with this. We would like to eventually see a path towards a balanced budget. But with this dramatic reduction in spending, we're confident they'll eventually be able to get there and saving a lot of money. I will say, coming from Alberta, we have a Taxpayer Protection Act here in Alberta. And Rob, that is what has shielded Albertans for years against a sales tax. And now it is shielding us from tax hikes too. So that would save people a lot of money, and ultimately, we think that's.
So are you saying that in Alberta you have to have a referendum before you can increase taxes? Is that?
That's right, my friend.
Okay.
Yeah, sure does. Right. So if Danielle Smith, if the Premier wanted to hike, say, income taxes on us, or wanted to introduce
or bring in a sales tax,
we would have to vote in favor of it in a referendum. And I know you're getting a lot of calls about this. It's affordability. Being able to afford your basic needs right now is essential. And having protections against tax hikes, I think that would be a big deal.
So it's net reduction in program spending, reducing government spending. It's $3 billion in the first year, $4.5 in the second, and about $6 in the third, and almost $9.7 billion in the fourth. Forecasting deficits of $31 billion, $31 billion, $23 billion, and then down to $14 billion. What do you think about what's in here, Jordan?
So I think it's a very conservative platform, and I think a lot of these things have been announced throughout the campaign. It's more meant to target towards less overall government program spending and creating big government, and instead, that very conservative principle of allowing individuals to use their own money to invest. I think one of the policies that's certainly been applauded in many circles and on both sides of the aisle is the one about being allowed to reinvest into capital gains free into Canadian companies. I think that's those are the types of policies when you're staring down the U.S. in the middle of a trade war that can build that type of economic resiliency here. So it is a much more platform designed towards deregulation, putting more money back in people's pockets, and those are very conservative principles that they've been talking about for the last couple of years.
Okay, Jordan, how would you say this compares to the Liberal platform?
Well, I think just look at the deficit spending numbers. I mean, the Liberal platform, I heard somebody say on TV the other day, or maybe it was this morning, that I think they just went and hit Control F and replaced Carney's name with Trudeau's name. Apologies, I don't know who to credit that to, but I thought that was a good line. I mean, this is a big spending plan that the Liberals have. Their deficits are projected to grow over the next number of years, record levels, and continued with some of the same just levels of ideological spending that the Liberals continued on. So yeah, and just not more. A couple of the ideas that they took from Conservatives on taking away the carbon tax and those measures, but by and large, it's a Justin Trudeau type platform.
Rob,
yeah, just hold on, Chris. The budget forecast from the Liberal platform: $62 billion this year, $60 billion next year, $54 billion the year after that, and still almost $48 billion budget deficit in year 4. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, it's just those numbers are staggering, eh? Like, I was actually surprised. I'm like, no, Carney put that out? Like, I thought the banker was supposed to be better with money than the drama teacher here. Like, he was supposed to be the sober guy in the room. That's what a lot of normal people kind of viewed him as. So I actually thought I was, straight up, I thought I was misreading it when the Liberals put out their platform over the weekend. And your difference there, I think the difference, quick math, on the 4th year of their mandate, I think it's a $30 billion difference in the deficit between the Carney Liberals and the Poilievre Conservatives. So we're seeing
$34 billion.
Budgets here. Dude, that's
$34
a lot
billion.
of extra money. That's a lot of extra money. And keep in mind, all of this is our borrowed money. We have to pay.
Okay, Chris, let me ask you just something else about this idea. You wouldn't need a university degree to apply for many government jobs. What do you think about that?
I personally think it's great. I mean, I'm biased because I have 1 year of trade school. I don't have a university degree. And I think that'd be great if you can apply and if you're good for the job. If you can do the job and you do the entrance requirements, I don't see any reason why you'd need one.
Yeah,
what do you think about that, Jordan?
Yeah, just like Chris was saying, I think this is more to toss some of the working class voters that Conservatives have been allowed to take on. I mean, why should someone that has gone into skilled trades and still has a lot to offer in terms of government functioning required to have a Bachelor of Arts or something like that? I think it should be the best person for the job if people can prove in aptitude that they can do it, and they should be able to, and not have some other random requirements out there.
Okay, very interesting. When we come back, your life is an open book. If you want to run for public office, just ask Larry Brock today. I'm going to run this by our political panelists today here on News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
It is our Newsday panel. Chris Sims is here, the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, but Chris, longtime journalist as well. Jordan Pickett, vice president of Blue Sky Strategy Group. Global News, very revealing story today from some very experienced news reporters at Global News, involving Conservative candidate Larry Brock, who was a critic in the Conservative caucus. This news story goes into a great deal about his personal financial situation, some of which he failed to disclose to the ethics commissioner. Probably should have done that. And the news report is based on a tip from someone from the Liberals, clearly doing opposition research on this Conservative candidate. And then I guess Global said, well, thanks for the tip. And then they went and they independently verified everything. So it's more evidence. If you're going to run for political office, you are agreeing to have your life be an open book. And I just wonder what Jordan, you would say how parties and candidates should handle this sort of thing, and whether this kind of level of scrutiny can scare away potential candidates from ever seeking public office. What do you think?
I mean, that is something that you certainly hear from several people that I've encouraged to run over the years, is that they don't want to just be completely out in the public eye, have their families out in the public eye as well. And that is the current situation in Canada, well, and around the world as well. We live in a very digital age. Anything you do, I mean, if you're a politician, you're out at the Senators game over through the course of the playoffs, someone's probably going to be watching you and very much scrutinizing what you're drinking, what you're eating, what you're doing.
Where did you sit? Who paid for the tickets? Who were you sitting with? Everything else, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that, I guess it is in a sense. I mean, politicians do get entrusted to do a job, and it is a high-profile job and a powerful job. They get paid a decent amount of money. Some people take pay cuts to get into it, of course. But it is, I think, there are situations where it is tough to recruit people, knowing that type of scenario is out there, that constantly, you're putting your family and yourself under.
But it's also proof positive that the parties have to do their own vetting of their own candidates, because rest assured, the opposition is going to do that research for them. This is more evidence. This is more evidence of that.
Yeah,
Chris, comment on this. Chris, go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
I'll admit I felt bad for him when I read this, and I would feel bad for him if he was wearing an orange jersey or a red jersey. In this case, it sounds like there was a miscommunication about whether or not he had to pay for parking at his MP residence in Ottawa, and the bills stacked up, and he had to resolve those. Now, these rules are in place in order to prevent people from money laundering, okay, or trafficking, or being, mega deep into debt. And so that way you're having to take this MP job. And the reason why they're asking these questions is to make sure that you are not getting undue influence.
Right.
That
you're not vulnerable, to pressure or whatever. Right.
Correct. Whereas, unfortunately, everything gets caught up in it, including things like unpaid parking tickets in this case. And so I understand why the rules are there, and we want accountability. But as a person, I can't help but feel a little bad for him and a bit embarrassed.
All right. Give me a riding to watch on election night. What's a good riding to watch on election night? Very quickly, Jordan, 30 seconds. Give me a riding to watch.
Canada, just sometimes here in Ottawa.
West end of Ottawa, okay.
Yeah, right. Former Cabinet Minister Jenna Sudds, but also a very paramedic, Greg Kung, former Hill staffer, just all-around good guy, very smart guy. I think he's probably knocked on the most doors out of anybody at any party in the country. So if he wins this ride, it's really going to be one of those ones that comes down to hard work paying off and door knocking.
That was a close one last time around, too. Okay. Riding to watch, Chris, 30 seconds. Riding to watch.
It's a toss-up between the one that Aaron Gunn is riding in, which is Vancouver Island North, the Powell River area, and that ring around Vancouver, right where Surrey meets Langley. That is going to be a dogfight to the very end door.
Okay. I'm saying, I was saying Ottawa Centre, which is kind of a rematch. The Democrats typically very strong there, held by the New Democrats provincially. But now I think with all of the momentum of Carney and the history of that riding going Liberal, I think it's advantage Liberal, and the heart of downtown Ottawa would be my riding to watch. All right. Thanks, everyone. Talk soon. All the best.
Snowman.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. Chris Sims in Saskatchewan today. And Jordan Piquette in Ottawa. I'm Rob Snow. Talkback is coming up right after the news.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, the pitch. The pitch from the two leaders who have the best shot at becoming prime minister after this election is over and done with in less than a week from now, Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. Today, we want to ask you about key messages, a key part of what these two leaders are saying to voters over and over again, wherever they go. Some political observers describe it as hope versus fear. Hope versus fear. You can draw your own conclusions. But these two leaders have been all over the country in the last 29 days, and there are just 6 days to go for them to try and convince you that they are the best person to lead this country. And everywhere they go, they repeat the same core message. For the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, he has really been emphasizing Donald Trump and the threat that the Trump administration presents for Canada. And he has repeatedly called that threat from Trump the greatest crisis of our lives. The greatest crisis of our lives. For example, this was Mark Carney speaking just yesterday in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island.
We're in the most serious crisis of our lifetimes. And we need a government that has a strong mandate, a clear mandate. We need a government that has a plan that meets the moment. Within a few days, the Prime Minister of Canada will be sitting down with the President of the United States. It's a choice. Do you go with a plan? Do you go with someone who knows how to negotiate? Do you go with someone who knows how to manage a crisis? Do we send someone who has the backing of the Canadian people? That's the choice in the election.
You hear the quote there. The most serious crisis of our lifetimes is what he said. The most serious crisis of our lifetimes, Donald Trump. And he repeats that wherever he goes. It's what he talks about first. It's what he talks about the most. The Trump situation in the United States, the tariffs. Trump's talk about making Canada the 51st state. Mark Carney has described this as Trump's desire to restructure the international trading system and rupture the global economy. And you need someone of his background, his experience to lead the country through this crisis. Again, a crisis he calls the greatest of our lifetimes. The greatest of our lifetimes. Mark Carney, 60 years old, born in March of 1965. That's his lifetime. Maybe you're older, maybe you're younger. I'm younger. We want to know this about that Mark Carney message today. Is Donald Trump's second term as president of the United States the greatest crisis we have ever faced in our lifetimes? Mark Carney says it is, and that's why you should vote for him. But is that true or not? This situation with Donald Trump in the White House, is it so dire, so consequential that it qualifies as the greatest crisis of our lifetimes? If it is, we want to know why you think it is. If it's not, we want to know, what do you think has been the greatest crisis of our lifetimes? Think about it. Give us a call, 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. The greatest crisis of our lifetimes. Then there's Pierre Poilievre, 45 years old, born June 1979. And wherever he goes, he has his own well-worn lines. But he always seems to close with a variation of this pitch to voters. His hope message, what he calls the Canadian promise. This was Poilievre at one of his rallies earlier this month in Penticton, British Columbia.
I'm here to say that change is coming. We are going to restore the Canadian promise so that anyone who works hard gets a great life and a beautiful house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under our proud Canadian flag. Canada first. Let's bring it home.
He says that, or a variation of that, wherever he goes. He said it today during his event outlining the Conservative platform. It's kind of his call to action. It's how he kind of wraps it all up. Anyone who works hard gets a great life in a nice house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under a proud flag. I've heard it so many times over the last few months, I can almost recite it by heart. What we want to know about this, about Pierre Poilievre and his pitch to you, do you think that vision that he has of Canada is a realistic one? Or is he selling an unrealistic vision for Canada? Perhaps a Norman Rockwell, if you will, vision of Canada. What do you think? Everyone who works hard gets a nice house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under a proud flag. How realistic is that for you? Is that a realistic vision for Canada? Or is Pierre Poilievre selling Canadians a fantasy of Canada? Maybe a Canada that doesn't really exist, never existed, maybe never will exist. What do you think? We want to discuss this today because these are two very important messages from these two leaders. And these are the two people with the best shot of leading a government after the election concludes on Monday. What do you think about what they're selling? Mark Carney says, Trump, the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. But is that true? Pierre Poilievre says everyone who works hard can have a nice house on a safe street. True? Possible? Canadian fantasy land? Give it some thought and give us a call. Our phone lines are open right now. 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, we'd love to hear from you for the very first time. Just mention that, and we will make your call a priority. 1-833-668-2577. Let's get this discussion underway, the Tuesday Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who is ready to help the Liberal Party win the most consequential election in our lifetimes? This is the most consequential vote of our lifetimes. To face the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. It is the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. The most consequential election of our lifetime. Because we are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. We're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready.
The leaders and their key messages, the topic of the day, the messages that Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney repeat in all of their speeches. You heard Mark Carney there, the Liberal leader, the greatest crisis of our lifetimes, most consequential election of our lifetimes, but the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. Is that true? Pierre Poilievre says he will restore the Canadian promise. Everyone who works hard gets a nice house on a safe street. Is he selling a fantasy? 1-833-668-2577. Gary, let's go to Gary in Calgary. Hi, Gary.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Gary. Thanks for calling, Gary.
Hi, Rob. I'm glad you took my call.
Yeah, my pleasure.
The one thing I'm really disappointed with this election is, with Carney anyhow, is he seems to be running on fear, like fear-mongering. He's always talking about Donald Trump and how Donald Trump is who we got to beat and who we got to take over, and he's scaring everybody with it. And I think that's a wrong thing. I think people got to get over that. We have to concentrate on the economy and not about Donald Trump. Whoever's in power in our election, Poilievre or Carney, Trump's only going to be there. And he's going to do exactly what Donald Trump wants to do, which is a lot of fearing. He scares people so they come to him. Poilievre, I say, at least he talks about the economy and doesn't worry about so much Trump. I know he says he will fight just like everybody else.
Yes.
But it's frustrating to hear Carney always talk about that. And I wish the people in the East would realize I was born there for 32 years. I've been in Calgary for 34. I have a lot of friends back there, and some of them have changed over from the Liberals. They're tired of it too. But out here in the West, I know we're conservative, and they always talk about, baby boomers are more going to Liberals. Well, all the people I know, my friends, are all well over 55, 65. And they're all going conservative. So I hope people would just wake up and understand it's not about fear.
Let me ask you, Gary. Let me ask you to one of the questions that we have. To your point, Mr. Carney keeps calling this the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. And you're about the same age as Mr. Carney, maybe a little bit older. This threat from Donald Trump, do you consider it to be the greatest crisis of our lifetimes?
Absolutely not. And that's why people are scared. They're scared because they figure he's a financial advisor from the top all the way down, and they think that that's who we need to get in there.
What would be a bigger crisis than this? What would be a bigger crisis, for example, in your lifetime?
Well, a bigger crisis right now is the affordability for housing, the cost of living.
Okay.
The economy is the biggest crisis right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Okay, good to hear from you. Yep. And let's go to Tim is in Nova Scotia. Hi there, Tim. Thanks for calling, Tim. You're on the air.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Tim. How are you?
Oh, not too bad.
Well, great to hear.
I don't like Mark Carney at all. He's doing the same thing the Liberals have done for the past how many years. Fear, 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 fear. COVID was fear. This is fear. And to answer your question about greater crises, I don't know. North Korea with nuclear weapons, the Cold War, the housing crisis in the 80s, the Gulf War, both of them. There's been a lot of crap that's happened in the past couple decades.
Sure,
and
yeah.
Donald Trump and these trade embargoes, the greatest threat, let's be honest with ourselves. If the Liberals had to push forward with the LNG projects, I want to say Germany, I think, was coming over to try and get our LNG.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Germany, Japan,
Yeah, Japan. If we had proceeded with those plans or the pipelines or any other number of these projects that would have made us more economically feasible and able to put ourselves out more in the global markets, we wouldn't be as worried about Donald Trump.
Okay, let me ask you. When you hear Pierre Poilievre say, everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street, brave troops, proud flag. I mean, is he is he laying it on thick? Is he being unrealistic? What do you think? Or is he on to something there? What do you think?
Well, I think there's been a lot of great men throughout history. Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, not making him a comparison to Poilievre.
Right.
But it's all started with a campaign promise.
Okay.
I also ascribe to the vision that you show me an honest politician, I'll show you a liar. But what we've been doing so far hasn't been working. At least his message is positive, trying to give hope. Could you imagine? I'm not a huge fan of Donald Trump either. Really don't care American politics. But imagine if they said tomorrow, all your overtime is non-taxed, like they're pushing down there. Imagine how big that would be for people up here. Or just these little things. So I do
have a lot of people
that
working overtime, I suspect. Okay. Thank you very much, Tim in Nova Scotia. And we are off and running here on Talkback. Please join the discussion. One line available at 1-833-668-2577.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
I believe in this country. I believe in its promise. And I believe our country is ready for change. Change that will bring hope. Change that will mean that our young people will have a future again. And that they will have children of their own they can raise in safe neighborhoods. And that when those kids are born, they'll be taught that they can do absolutely anything in this country. That they can cure cancer, start a business. Maybe what they want is just to grow up and buy a home, have 2 kids and a dog, and enjoy a peaceful Canadian life with a nice flag hanging from the front porch. That's the promise that the country made to me. And I owe this country everything for letting me stand on this stage, coming from my humble beginnings. And I want everybody to have the same chance that I have.
I mean, it sounds idyllic. That's Pierre Poilievre, one of his key messages, restoring the Canadian promise. But is he selling a fantasy? Meantime, Mark Carney, Liberal leader, one of his key messages, Donald Trump presents the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. The greatest crisis of our lifetimes. Do you think that's true? Chris in Martins Point, Nova Scotia. Hello, Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you for calling. What's your opinion?
No problem. I just got one quick thing to say about Poilievre's message.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fantasy. I'm 69 years old. I'll be 70 this year. I grew up in that Canada.
Right.
I grew up in a Canada where everybody had a doctor. If you had a job, you worked hard, everybody could afford a home. The streets were a lot safer than they are now because of no catch and release. Criminals were punished. They weren't put back out on the street to do it again. So no, it's not a pipe dream. It's a reality. And I grew up in that time period. So
fair enough.
Now, as far as Carney Blarney and that foolishness that he's, it's what it is to me is it's deflection at its absolute best.
Really?
The Liberal Party was imploding not that long ago. They were going down by the bow, so they did the only thing they could do. They suspended the democratic process till they could figure out how they could save and resurrect the party. And every good leader knew one thing: if you can find a common enemy to rally people around, you got yourself a successful recipe right there. And along came Donald Trump, the big bad boogeyman. So now they don't have to run their campaign on their track record, because if they did that, that's political suicide. As far as the greatest crisis, no, I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the world was like a hair's breadth away from World War III. So, no, and if you want recent times, we're in the greatest crisis right now that Canada's ever faced, and it was made possible by 10 years of Liberal mismanagement. We got Alberta threatening to secede from the Union. Our GDP is a joke. I mean, I can go on and on and on about all the scandals and everything else, but the thing is that that's what he's doing.
But you think he's amplifying fear?
Yes,
amplifying
exactly.
fear, right? By calling this the greatest crisis of our lifetime.
Right. I mean, Donald Trump is a made in America Frankenstein, and America will deal with him. There's already cracks in the honeymoon, I guess, if you'd say it. And I mean, he hasn't even been in for years. So no, he's not our greatest crisis. We are our own greatest crisis.
Very interesting. Okay, I like your analysis, Chris. Thank you for calling. We'll have to stop here. We'll pick it up right after the news. There are 2 free lines available if you want to get in on this discussion today. The key messages from the 2 individuals with the best shot of becoming prime minister after the election is finished on Monday night. Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney, and the lines they repeat in every single one of their events. I want your assessment of them, how accurate they are. Join the discussion on Talkback here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The leaders and their key messages are the topic of the day here on Talkback. These are messages that Pierre Poilievre and Carney repeat in all of their speeches. Liberal leader Mark Carney says Donald Trump presents the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. What do you think about that line? Do you think it's true? Meantime, Pierre Poilievre says he will restore the Canadian promise. Everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street. Is that true? Is that Pierre Poilievre selling a fantasy? What do you think? 1-833-668-2577 to Michael in Cape Breton. Hello, Michael. Hello, Michael.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Michael. Thank you for calling, Michael. Go ahead.
Yeah, on Mr. Carney, on the debate the other night, the moderator asked him in plain, clear English, what is the biggest substantial threat to Canada? You know what his answer was?
What was
China.
his answer?
So he either got China, and then 2 days later, he comes out in one of his ads, the biggest threat is Donald Trump. So he better make his mind up who's the biggest threat. I think they're all only playing mind games with the people, trying to scare them to death. I listened to CTV News this morning out of Halifax, and they said nobody got a bump at a debate. And Nick Nanos was on, and Nick Nanos said 2 points. The NDP got at a debate, a bump at a debate. So I called the news station, and they took it after newscast, but they run it all morning. So they're all playing head games with the Canadian people, and I feel sorry for those people that run out and voted for nothing because they believed in a big lie. It's either China or Donald Trump. But Mr. Carney, I know you're sly and treacherous with a cumulative effect. Make your mind up. We got enough agony in this country.
Let me ask you, Michael. Let me ask you, because you've been around a long time. Let me ask you, Michael, because you've been around a long time. When you hear Pierre Poilievre say, everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under a proud flag. What do you think when you hear that?
You know when he left out the white picket fence? He's back in the days of Leave It to Beaver, When his ads come on like that, it comes on all the time, I stand at attention and salute the flag. Now they're so phony. I'm just sick of all of them. But
Phony,
if people
okay.
in the country are going to pay, and they're falling for Mr. Carney's lies, and they better wake up in a hurry. And I feel sorry for the people that run to the advanced polls at the false fear. It's neither Donald Trump and it's not China. It's neither one. Our biggest fear is Mr. Carney. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, Michael. Thank you. To Rick in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Hello, Rick. You're on the air. Your opinion, please, Rick. Hey.
Good morning.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I'm okay. It's afternoon where you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I used to listen to Michael in the morning on our own
It's
station.
afternoon here, too. Okay,
Look,
go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Look, in response to your previous Michael caller from the other part of Nova Scotia, he said a lot of the things that I would certainly have said. But I am, about to be 73. I live in a nice house on a safe street. And I had a pretty kind of weird job. I was a musician for all my life. Just played in bars and, made enough money. And anyway, I had
Did you
a
work
good
hard?
life, so
Did you work hard, or did you hardly work?
Yeah, I did lots of work on the couple of 150-year-old houses that we own. So I did lots of work in my off time. But look, the existential threat, and existential, of course, for people that really don't use that word a lot, means the end of your existence.
Yes.
So saying that, Trump is it's just ridiculous. And I've been saying that to you, Rob, on your show since it first came out, the first day that he said 51st state, I chimed in on that. But there's a kind of a weird thing going on. We talk about no social media, so I'll just leave you with this. I have Mark Carney's book because, I was just curious to see exactly what it said. And it says exactly, what we had for the carbon tax. It describes it, and the book, of course, came out in 2021. It described exactly how the carbon tax was going to proceed. And I think that Mark Carney is like a religious zealot when it comes to carbon tax and climate change and all of that stuff. I think that it is the single most driving force in his life, and you can check it out by seeing that he's a special envoy of the United Nations, et cetera, et cetera. So he clearly describes the carbon tax in his book as what he wants and what we actually had.
I wonder if he calls I wonder if in that book he calls climate change the greatest threat of our lifetimes, or the greatest crisis of our lifetimes.
He does. I haven't got through the whole book. But look, here's the part. One of my friends fact-checked this quote that I put on. It's, just right from the book. And it came back and he said, ChatGPT says this is not a direct quote from the book. And I'm like, what? And he said it's a summary of Mark Carney's ideas, okay? And I went, okay. So I waited a couple of days, and I thought, I better fact-check it myself. So I went to the same GPT and put in the same thing, and this time it came out saying, basically, this is what all the true government sources say. It's it's a beautiful thing. It's actually what the carbon tax is supposed to do. Anyway, it came out and instead of saying it's a quote from the book, it said this is a great government policy, and it quoted tons and tons of organizations. In Canada. So anyway,
right.
I
Okay.
found that weird.
Thank you, Rick. Good to hear from you today. We will stop here, and then we'll go out to Calgary, speak with Andrew, up over to Kitchener, take a drive over to Mississauga as well on Talkback here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
This is the most consequential vote of our lifetimes because President Trump has ignited a trade war that has ruptured Rob, sure. No, we don't like Trump here. We don't like Trump here.
We are going to restore the Canadian promise so that anyone who works hard gets a great life and a beautiful house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under our proud Canadian flag. Canada first. Let's bring it home.
And we're talking about key messages from the leaders today. Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney say a variation of those things in all of their speeches. Mark Carney repeatedly says Donald Trump presents the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. What do you think about that line? Well, as Pierre Poilievre talks about restoring the Canadian promise, work hard, get a nice house, live on a safe street. What do you think about that line from Poilievre? 1-833-668-2577 to Andrew in Calgary. Hello, Andrew. You're on the air, Andrew.
Hey there, Rob. Thanks for your show.
Hi, Andrew. Good to hear from you, Andrew. Thank you.
So I'll try and keep it short and sweet.
Take your
as far
time.
as Pierre goes, one of the things I've begun to appreciate with this campaign the last month is Pierre has tried to think of this as he's going to be running the country. He's talking about different parts of this platform and not focusing on the one thing that everyone else is focusing on, which is Trump. So it's been kind of nice to see that he's thinking about a bigger picture.
Okay, because he's facing a lot of criticism, as you know, even from some pretty powerful conservative figures in the conservative movement who say if he goes down in flames in this election, he's going to lose it because he hasn't been focused enough on Trump. He's been focused on other things, working hard, nice houses, safe streets, brave troops, proud flags, all of these things.
I think this takes us to Carney, who is scaring us. We've talked about the fear thing and the fear mongering, and I have to ask why does he want to scare me? And I think that Trump is not the greatest threat. I'm beginning to suspect the greatest threat might be Canadians themselves for not taking a step back and going, why is this person trying to scare me? Why am I being motivated emotionally instead of thinking with a clear head? Let's stop being scared and think about this, because Trump won't be around forever. You either deal with them and you don't, or you don't. And I think most leaders have decided not to deal with them. We're going to go our own way, make new connections, and Canadians should probably remember that he's not going to be around. We need to think about who's going to run the country afterwards and what they're going to be doing for this country.
Okay, I'm circling back to this. Donald Trump presents the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. The greatest crisis of our lifetimes. If it's not the greatest crisis of our lifetimes, I don't know how old you are. I'm in my mid-50s, been through a few crises. I don't know if this qualifies as the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. What do you think? What would compare to this?
I think he's just a hiccup. He's just a
hiccup
on the road.
Okay.
If anything, he's a bit of a wake-up call in that, maybe we as Canadians, as a country, have been slumbering a little too long. But he's certainly not a crisis in my mind. It's not worth getting scared over.
Not even a crisis, let alone the greatest crisis. That's very interesting. Thank you, Andrew in Calgary, to Andre in Kitchener. Hi, Andre. You're up next. Andre, you're on the air. What's your opinion today?
Well, thank you very much for your show, Rob, and to you.
Thank you for calling.
Very clear. That's why I'm calling, because I have to remind people that, to me, the biggest crisis is to come if we don't smarten up. The Liberals have been big and strong for the longest time, but we have to remember what happened in the last 9 years. We have to remember where Carney come from and what he's doing. And I said it on your show, Rob, about Poilievre, my magic polka dot rabbit, that he's willing to do the change. And you know what? By listening to him, he's talking normal, Rob. I remember, I'm 56, and I do remember my parents. My dad was a trucker. My mom stayed home, and my aunt, triplets. They had 6 kids, but they still had a life. So you work, you deserve some luxuries or whatever.
Nice house on a safe street. Did they have a nice house on a safe street, Andre?
Right now?
Did they have a nice house on a safe street?
They had a normal house, yes.
Normal house
and
on a safe street.
Today, it's really hard to grab on to anything right now, and that has to change, right?
Okay.
So that's, to me, the biggest crisis is I'm really watching this election and how it's happening, because I have to adapt. If there's no change and it's liberal again, I have to watch my back. I have to watch my feet. I have to watch where I go. And Rob, if you don't mind, I'd like to explain something about change, if you don't mind.
Very quickly, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, I'm blind. I had an injury 3 years ago, and I never accepted what happened, and I was having rehabilitation. And now, after rehabilitating through course and programs, I've learned from older people that in life, you have to learn the loss, and you have to learn new things. Right? And that's what I'm doing, and it helped me mentally. And I think the same thing is life. We have to do the same thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Andre. All the best to you. I'm always happy when you call. 1-833-668-2577 to join the discussion here on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about the leaders and their key messages. What do you think when you hear Mark Carney say Donald Trump presents the greatest crisis of our lifetimes? Or when Poilievre says, everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street? Share your thoughts, please, on these key messages. They repeat them wherever they go. Arlene is a first-time caller calling from Calgary today, and I thank you for doing that, Arlene. You're on the air. What's your opinion here about what you hear from these leaders, Arlene?
Good morning, Rob. It's still morning, I think, in Calgary.
5 minutes to go.
I listen to your show all the time.
I appreciate that.
And I would say this morning, Chris from Nova Scotia really said it very well this morning, as well as Gary in Calgary. But it's fear versus hope that I see, and the message of fear from Trump, I truly believe that the people in America will destroy Trump. America is going to suffer more than maybe us in Canada by these tariffs because of all the things that are happening. So I think Trump will self-destruct by some means. And as far as the election concerns, again, it's hope versus fear. And I believe Pierre Poilievre, who is from Calgary, grew up here in a community near mine. And I was in also Stephen Harper's community. And I believe in the conservative policies, and it is hope against fear. And Carney doesn't deserve to be prime minister. He hasn't done his work. Pierre Poilievre has been in Parliament for years. He knows where all the money's been going. And
okay. Arlene, are you still there, Arlene? Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so let me ask you, Arlene, because it sounds like you've been around a while. You've seen a few elections in your day, maybe been through a few crises in your lifetime. Is this what we are presented with now with Donald Trump, the greatest crisis? It sounds like you don't believe this is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes, as Mr. Carney insists.
Of course it isn't. It isn't. Okay. I mean, I was 40 years in healthcare, and the greatest crisis is our recent one, is a COVID that killed hundreds of our Canadians and people around the world. That's a great crisis. And healthcare is a crisis today. Yeah.
Okay.
No, certainly not.
Certainly not. Okay.
I'm really happy to see Stephen Harper coming out of the woodwork here in Calgary. And I hope, all I can hope is Ontario have values of Alberta. Nova Scotia certainly does. I've lived in 5 provinces, and we need you, Ontario. We need you badly with all your seats, and I hope we can get a majority government as we did with Stephen Harper.
Well, we'll all be watching to see how it turns out on Monday. Most of the polls are still giving the edge to the Liberals, as you know. I'm sure you're aware of that. Arlene, with 6 days to go.
I'm a political junkie. Yeah.
You're a political junkie. Well, you know what, Arlene? You may be a first-time caller, but you're going to fit in beautifully around here. I hope you'll call again. Thank you for calling today.
I've been wanting to. It just makes me nervous. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you're great today. You call back anytime and keep listening. Thank you so much, Arlene. Bye-bye. Okay, that's hour number 1 in the books. Boy, it flew by today. We'll bring you right up to date on the latest breaking news today. And then we'll be back with hour number 2 of Talkback here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
It is the biggest crisis of our lifetimes, because what has happened is that the U.S. is trying to break us as a nation because they want to own us. And that is not an exaggeration. That is not an exaggeration. They want our land. They want our resources. They want our water. They want our country. And the answer is right here.
So our purpose here today is to bring the change that will enable that promise to be renewed. Change so you can afford a good life. Change so that you can afford a nice home. Change so that you're safe in your community. Change so that we put Canada first. Let's bring it home.
So we've been talking about the leaders' key messages. That's our topic for the day here on Talkback. Welcome to hour number 2. I'm Rob Snow. We have 2 lines available if you would like to join the discussion. Phone number 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. And we welcome first-time callers. We'll give you priority. Liberal leader Mark Carney, you hear it wherever he goes, saying Donald Trump is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. We want to know what you think of that statement. Do you think it's accurate? Do you think it's true? Poilievre repeatedly talks about wanting to restore Canada's promise. He talks about everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street. What do you think about that? Is he selling something that's a realistic vision for Canada, or maybe a more idealized version of Canada? Your thoughts, please, at 1-833-668-2577 as we go back to our phone calls and talk to Glenn in Calgary today. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for calling.
Hello. I will first say that I have never liked the Conservatives.
Okay.
However, I have voted for them the last 2 elections in my riding because the man in my riding was 100% better than any Liberal anywhere, and I've never liked the Liberals either.
Okay.
So now
Okay.
I am voting for a member of the Conservative Party, the one that replaced the one I've been voting for, because the Conservative message can be real. When I was a teenager, I was able to buy a $9,000 home, which about 10 years later, I sold for $250,000 for the land. It had 10 acres.
Wow. Okay.
I bought another house with that money, which I sold just before the market fell apart in 80. And I've never been able to even afford a down payment since because of the changes by both the Liberal and Conservative government. But one should look closely. Carney was involved in writing hundreds of pamphlets and 2 books. Only one is now available on the internet. That's because the others advocated things that he's pretending not to know about, including the World Bank taking over the finances of the world and putting all the people with no money in 100-mile squares, and they have to live there, can't even own a car. I mean, things like that.
Well, 15 minutes is okay. But let me ask you, he says repeatedly, he says this over and over again. You just heard it. The greatest crisis of our lifetime is Donald Trump and the Trump administration and the U.S. fracturing the global economy, upending the rules-based order. He says things like this, is that we are living through right now, because of Trump, the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. What do you think about that? Is that, you sound like you've been around. Is that true?
Get out right. BS.
BS. Okay. What would be bigger? What's a bigger crisis that you've lived through?
The crisis in '80, when everybody lost their houses and nobody has been able to go back to owning them. That is the biggest crisis in our lifetime. I mean, I am going on to 79 now.
Right. Okay.
I'm still working because my pension will not pay my way.
Wow. At 80 years old, you're still working. Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Yes. I was out working outdoors in the half-ass snowstorm we had last night.
Okay. Well, you must be a hardy figure, sir. I thank you for your call today, and thank you for hanging in there through the news. Okay, you wanted to add one more thing. Go ahead. Yes.
Carney, if you look it up in the dictionary, says a carnival grifter. That's a perfect description of the Carney we're dealing with.
Okay. All right.
Personal.
All right. Okay. Okay. I got you. Thank you. We'll move along. Got to go to who is up next here? John in Cochrane, first time caller calling from Cochrane. Thank you, John. Hi, John.
Hello there. John here.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Thanks for
Rob
taking
here.
my call.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Great. First thing, I'd just like to say that really encouraged to listen to some of the support you're getting from the Eastern voters, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. That's very encouraging.
Yeah, well, maybe the minority opinion in that part of the country, I think.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And also, that lady, Arlene, she stole a lot of my thunder, but she was right on the money, in my opinion, as far as, Harper coming out and speaking on, throwing his support behind Poilievre. And, so I'm all in for Mr. Poilievre.
Now, let me ask you this. When Mr. Carney says, because he says it at every event that he attends, he'll say it multiple times today in both official languages, Donald Trump is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. What do you think about that assessment?
Well, I laugh. I think
you laugh.
Okay. Going to be the greatest crisis we're going to face. But no, I've lived through many crises, 9/11, Cuban crisis, COVID, nothing compared. I mean, Trump does not compare to any of those.
Really?
He'll be gone soon enough.
And when Poilievre says everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street and brave troops under a proud flag. I mean, when you hear that stuff, I mean, it's I call it kind of Norman Rockwellish. It's this idyllic version of Canada. what do you think about it?
I love it. I think
you
we
love
need
it.
That kind of
what do you like about it?
Well, it's true. We've been there. We can get back there.
Been there. We can get back
I grew up in a little wartime house. My father was a soldier, but the streets were safe. We loved life, and now, I mean, I'm retired now. It's a struggle. The Trudeau regime and now the new Liberal regime are ruining my retirement. It's just tougher and tougher every month to get by.
Okay, John, I appreciate you being a first-time caller. Hope to hear from you again in the future. And join the discussion now as we start hour number 2 of Talkback at 1-833-668-2577. 3 lines available and lots of time to fit you in here on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Who is ready to help the Liberal Party win the most consequential election in our lifetimes? This is the most consequential vote of our lifetimes to face the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. It is the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. The most consequential election of our lifetime. Because we are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. And we're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready.
That's a key message from Liberal leader Mark Carney. You hear it from him. Donald Trump, the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. What do you think about that he says at every campaign stop? Or Pierre Poilievre with his well-worn line, everyone who works hard will get a nice house on a safe street with a puppy dog and a white picket fence. Okay, I made that last part up. What do you think about these lines that you're hearing from these politicians? 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Lisa in Guelph. First-time caller. Thank you for calling today, Lisa. Offer up your opinion here. What do you think?
Hi. When I first heard Mr. Poilievre's commercial or ads regarding the nice house on a safe street if you work hard.
Yes.
And I thought of all the young people who are struggling, who want that dream, who want to buy a house. And I think for young people today who are working so hard to try and achieve that dream, knowing that, here in Ontario, Southern Ontario, to buy your first home, you would be very hard pressed to find something under $500,000. And
sure. Yeah.
that's going to be out of reach for young people trying to find their first home. And unless they have a really well-paying job, it's going to, take two salaries easily to try and qualify for mortgages or family help or something. So I think he's selling a pipe dream.
A pipe dream. Okay.
And it just doesn't seem realistic.
Okay.
For something that applies to all of Canada.
Right.
Not all the streets in Canada are going to be safe. There's so many times I look in the news and, so much untoward socially is happening in our communities. He can't guarantee that without changing legal precedent. So I really
you think he's selling a fantasy? You think he's selling a fantasy? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I was wondering if people maybe thought that. Yeah, okay.
I just thought it was, and somebody earlier said something in regards to Leave It to Beaver, and
Leave It to Beaver. Yeah.
Kind of a throwback to that idyllic post-war time where mom could stay home, and everybody sat
Dad
down
goes to work,
dinner.
comes home, greets the kids, everybody has dinner. Right.
Yeah. And that's just not reality, I don't think, for the
not reality.
Average Canadian family today.
All right, Lisa. Thank you. I've got to run. Thank you. I appreciate your opinion. Very interesting. Larry up next in Alberta. Hello, Larry. Hi, Larry.
Hello.
Hi, Larry. What's your opinion, Larry?
My opinion is it's time for a change of government. Big time.
Time for a change. Okay.
Far too long. And,
right.
We went through, Trudeau 1 and Trudeau 2, and our standard of living has been going down ever since. And I think the biggest crisis has been in this country has been the Liberal Party. They've just lowered our standard of living and raised the cost of living so high, and I think that's the biggest crisis we've had is the Liberal Party. And
so when Mark Carney says Donald Trump is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes, we are living in it right now. This is the greatest crisis of our lifetime. What do you think about that?
I think Trump is just a hiccup.
Trump is a hiccup.
Pass,
okay.
And I think Trump is just trying to give Canada a wake-up call.
Okay. What about what the previous caller said, that Pierre Poilievre is kind of selling a fantasy of Canada, a 50s fantasy of Canada? Work hard,
it is
nice
a bit
house,
of a fantasy, but it's a dream, and kids need a dream. I have 12 grandkids, and I mean, right now they can't even hardly, 2 or 3 of them have to live together to afford rent, and there's no way in the world, they have no dream of ever owning a home, and you need to give them some hope.
Okay, thank you for your call, Larry. Glad we could fit you in. Lots of time to fit you in as well on Talkback here on a Tuesday at 1-833-668-2577 on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been gathering your opinions on the core messages from the two people with the best shot of becoming prime minister after this election concludes. Messages that they repeat wherever they go. For example, Mark Carney, the Liberal leader, really hitting hard on Donald Trump and the threat of the Trump administration and what that means for Canada. He has repeatedly called this threat the greatest crisis of our lives. This was Mr. Carney in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island yesterday.
We're in the most serious crisis of our lifetimes. And we need a government that has a strong mandate, a clear mandate. We need a government that has a plan that meets the moment. Within a few days, the Prime Minister of Canada will be sitting down with the President of the United States. It's a choice. Do you go with a plan? Do you go with someone who knows how to negotiate? Do you go with someone who knows how to manage a crisis? Do we send someone who has the backing of the Canadian people? That's the choice in the election.
Most serious crisis of our lifetimes. Okay. Mark Carney. Wherever Pierre Poilievre goes, he has his own lines. He always closes with his own pitch to voters about what he calls the Canadian promise. This was at one of his rallies. If you've been at one of his rallies, you've probably heard him say this, seen him say this. This was earlier this month when he had a rally in British Columbia.
I'm here to say that change is coming. We are going to restore the Canadian promise so that anyone who works hard gets a great life and a beautiful house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under our proud Canadian flag. Canada first, let's bring it home!
Right, nice house, safe street, brave troops, proud flag. What's your assessment of these two pitches that these two men are making to voters in the closing days of this election campaign? Paul in Cambridge up next. Thanks for calling, Paul. You're on the air. Hi, Paul.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, Paul. Thank you. Good to hear from
background. Over 30 years ago, my wife and I, we both had good jobs. We're making, fairly good money and whatnot. And we bought this, the house that we liked. We could have spent a lot more money. The bank says, oh, you're qualified for this amount. But we said, we're going to buy what we're comfortable with. This is over 30 years ago. We bought a nice house on a safe street. And, we had a good life. Now, one of the things is I can keep the timeline pretty good because 10 years ago, I lost my wife.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I know, what things were like 10 years ago, and I see what things are like now. And right now, it would be pretty difficult to find that nice house on a safe street. I'm from Cambridge. This is not the Preston that I grew up in. It has changed. I am a 10-minute walk from where I grew up as a kid. I moved out of Cambridge/Preston, a long, long time ago, but I came back over 30 years ago. This is not the place that I grew up. And I know over the last 10 years, things have gone downhill. We had a major economic crisis a few years back. Canada, with some common sense, came through it relatively unscathed. Not that some people didn't get hurt, but we survived. Whereas in the U.S., all the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac,
it was very tough.
mortgages, They just collapsed because they pushed the American dream of buying the house that you couldn't afford on the basis that, well, it'll go up in value, and it didn't. And that's what destroyed the American economy. Canada, with our banking restrictions and whatnot, we survived. But over the last 10 years, I see the crime going up. I see the homeless encampments. These things were unheard of. Before I lost my wife, we used to go to the food bank and make a donation. Not all the time, but fairly regular. And the people that were there, they're certainly different than the people that are there now.
Well, let me ask you this, because I want to get your take on what Mark Carney's really pressing this. Trump is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. We have to confront Trump now.
Trump got elected in November. He took power in January, and this is the biggest crisis of our lifetime. That is BS. Nothing else. The crisis is the last 9-10 years of the Liberal government that has driven us into the ground. That's what. All
right, Paul, I'm going to wrap it up there for today. Thank you, Paul. Gotta go. I got more callers to fit in. The phone lines are jammed today. Let's go to Kim up next in Calgary. Hello, Kim. Thanks for calling, Kim.
Hi, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Kim. Good to hear from you. What do you think of these two pitches to the voters?
We are in a crisis, but the fact of the matter is him and his government put us in this crisis. He made us, the Liberal government has made us so vulnerable to the United States that we have to bow down to Mr. Trump. The fact, people have to see the reality. It doesn't matter what these leaders are saying just to get the vote right now. The reality is that this country is in a shambles. Like, people are struggling every day to make ends meet. Somebody's got to change that. And the fact of the matter is, do people really believe that the person who's dictated the last 10 years is going to carry on and make a change and do anything different? No, we need to have a change. I believe what Mr. Poilievre is saying, and I think that the fact of the matter is we need to use our resources to bring down our deficit. People have to understand that do we really want to leave our children and our grandchildren huge deficits? We're paying 30-35% income tax a year. Do you want your kids to be paying 50 to 60% by the time they come into the workforce? People.
Okay, but when you hear Mr. Poilievre said everyone who works hard gets a nice house on a safe street, some of the callers have said it sounds like a 1950s post-war fantasy that he's selling, like Leave It to Beaver kind of thing. It's just not real.
Yeah, but he's trying to give people hope. That's the problem.
Give people hope. Okay. All right.
People are miserable right now. They're struggling. Like, let's not get away. Like, Mr. Carney is using the Trump issue as a fear-mongering thing for people.
Fear. Okay.
The reality
fear versus
is people
hope.
are struggling right now. There's so much homeless. There's so much people not being able to afford to live. And, the Trump issue is it's an issue, and to be honest with you, Mr. Trump is going to always do what's best for him and his country. It doesn't matter which leader he deals with, whether it's Poilievre, whether it's Carney, right?
Okay. All right, Kim, thank you. I'll have to end our conversation there. Thank you. Lots of great opinions today. Join the discussion on Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking about the messages we hear from Poilievre and Carney all the time. 29 days they've been in campaign mode, 6 days to go. And with Carney, it's Trump, Trump, Trump almost all the time. The greatest crisis of our lifetimes. With Poilievre, it's about change and restoring the Canadian promise. Give me your thoughts on these messages. John in Calgary. Thanks for waiting there. John, you're on the air. What's your opinion, John?
Hey, Rob. How you doing? Listen,
I'm
sorry,
good,
I called in yesterday as well, but you know what? It's a pretty sad world with owning a home on a safe street's unreachable goal. I mean, come on.
Okay,
Let's work together with the government. Let's put in some programs or something. That shouldn't be unattainable. That shouldn't be unattainable. That's ridiculous.
All right. Okay.
Having Trump as the existential threat. 45 minutes ago, Ukraine was a existential threat to our democracy. Remember that one? That wasn't even a half hour ago.
Okay.
And that's just crap. They just love to scare you. And then it was COVID, and it was Ukraine. What's going to be tomorrow's Palestine? It's going to be something else is a big threat to us.
Okay.
It's crazy.
So you think he's preying on fear then? Preying on fear.
Oh,
amplifying
100%.
fear.
Ever since we lost all the media decided that it's okay to be on one side or the other, CNN and CBC and all this kind of stuff. That's just they just need whatever they want out there.
Okay, I don't know about that. I don't know how they do their jobs. I'm just trying to do mine, John. Thank you for your call,
you did
John.
a great job. You cover both sides.
No, thank you, John. I appreciate that, John. Thank you. I got to run. Lots of calls to fit in here. Not a lot of time to do it. Let's go to Rob. Is on the line. Hello, Rob.
Hey, Rob. Just had a quick question. Do you remember what Justin was campaigning, what his kind of catchphrase was initially? Remember what it was?
Initially. 2015? You mean the first time around 2015?
I don't type your time. If I'm not mistaken,
was it, I don't know, hope and hard work. Sunny ways. Yeah, you're right. Sunny ways. Sunny ways. Yeah.
Was that not hope? Did he not offer hope?
Yeah, hope. Sure.
With all due respect to the couple of callers there, and also as the gentleman last mentioned, what's the opposite of hope? Despair?
Despair? Yeah.
Poilievre's offering hope, and the Liberals are offering despair. Which one would you pick?
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't know. If I was a young person or any person that's not owning a home right now, if I listened to those two people and that was the hope that they offered was despair,
right?
It's not.
I think the Liberals would say, I guess they're offering experience in a time of crisis. Here we have in Mark Carney say a very experienced crisis manager to this is another line that he's to meet the moment, and the moment is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes.
So, and the solution is to increase our deficit by $137 billion. That's going to solve it.
Okay.
Give or take.
Okay.
The other thing is one of your callers, I think it was one of your callers, had said something fairly succinctly. It's like your team is down 6-0 going into the third period, and you change the goalie. You're still down 6-0. Changing the goalie is not gonna win the game for you.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying, right?
I do understand what you're saying, but this idea, because some of the callers have said, everyone who works hard gets a nice house on a safe street. It's fantasy. Somebody called it pie in the sky BS. Another said it sounds like something at a 1950s Leave It to Beaver. No?
Well, I grew up with a single mom. She worked her tail off, and we always had a roof over our head. How is that a fantasy? It's only fantasy if you believe it to be a fantasy. And if that's all you have in your life, I feel sorry for you.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Good to hear from you, Rob. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, you too. All right, let's stop here. And Emily, you're probably going to get the last word today. You're on Talkback. A very busy day of phone calls and opinions. We're loving the discussion. I'm Rob Snow here with David Smith. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, we've been talking about the key messages from the two political leaders. Mark Carney saying Donald Trump is the greatest crisis of our lifetimes. Poilievre promising to restore the Canadian promise. It looks like everyone who works hard gets a nice house on a safe street. What's more accurate in your opinion? Emily is up next on Talkback. I'm glad we could fit you in here, Emily. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Emily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good. That's good.
Pretty cool and crazy topic that you brought up today.
Yeah, well, It's been known to happen on this show.
Well, I do love this show.
Thank you.
I am by no means any kind of political expert, but it does affect me, and what I've heard in this show in particular is a lot of people sort of looking at the umbrella commentary, which is, Poilievre making this promise to people, but and Carney as well. But if you look at Poilievre's commentary about everyone having a nice home in a safe neighborhood if you work hard, he's really addressing quite a few issues in Canada right now, which is his job.
Yeah,
he's talking about the economy. He's talking about safety, a housing crisis, probably an employment crisis, financial crisis. So with one short statement, he's really addressing a lot of very important things in Canada. And Carney's statement is the opposite of that. He's just deflecting, just saying, well, pointing at that guy. And it's very black and white to me if you're listening and thinking, not just hearing a statement and then having sort of an emotional reaction to what they're saying, which is, I think, probably what good politicians do and rely on quite a bit. Right?
Yeah. So you think it's with that one line, work hard, nice home, safe street, and then brave troops, proud flag, kind of appealing to our patriotism, sense of duty, perhaps. He's kind of offering a synopsis of the things we have to confront in Canada.
Sure. I mean, he's got a lot to say. He's a very intelligent, well-spoken man, but I mean, how do you say everything that you know and you need to say to millions of people? You can really only say kind of one catch phrase. That's what he's chosen, and it's addressing as much as possible in a short statement, and it's a very positive statement. And I do understand how people can say, well, that's going back to the 50s. That's never going to happen, and it's because maybe they're hearing it in the wrong way. If you hear it from a business mind, you think, okay, we've got all these issues, and this is the goal, is to work through these issues and have something really positive and progressive at the end of it.
Okay. Wow. Really interesting analysis. Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
So glad. Yeah. So glad. Yeah. You have a great afternoon as well. And that's our time. And that's all of our calls. That was a great discussion today, David. I really, really enjoyed that. We will do it all over again tomorrow during the Wednesday talkback. Brand new topics, maybe election related. Quite likely tomorrow there'll only be 5 days left to go. I just wonder, when it comes to Poilievre and this nice house, safe street, this business, whether it is a vision of a picture perfect candidate, but can it really be delivered by any politician? Maybe he's tapping into nostalgia, which can be certainly a very powerful emotion, nostalgia. Maybe he's tapping into people's nostalgic side, remember how things used to be. Nostalgia is a very, very potent thing. And I think part of that closing line that you hear so often from Mr. Poilievre is an attempt to tap into that. If you work hard, get a nice house on a safe street, protected by brave troops under a proud flag. Tapping into a Canada that used to exist. But did it? For some Canadians, that's a version of Canada that is never existed. But maybe for many others, they will say, those were the good old days. Those were the good old days, and I'd love to have the good old days back. Thanks for the discussion today. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. Back tomorrow, the latest breaking news coming up next here on News Radio.